A lot of you might say, wow, so small, can buy meh? So 2-bedroom buyers, listen up. Now this is something that not all of your agents might tell you. What makes you think that your new launch will buck the trend of actual real-life transactions and suddenly become profitable? Hi everyone, my name is William from Own This Property and welcome back to the channel. Now I know that this video admittedly has come pretty late because I've been swamped with a lot of enquiries from you guys out there. So to all the YouTube viewers who have reached out to me, thank you very much. River Valley will experience one of the biggest surge in supply in the coming months, and in this month alone, which is July, there will be 2 new launches, which is River Green and Promenade Peak. So you might have seen a lot of videos out there analyzing these two properties, and you might still be wondering which is the better buy. So in this video, I'll be giving you my no holds bar objective analysis, and I'll also be pitting them against one another to answer definitively which is the better buy. So let's go. For the purpose of comparison, we'll be using our trusty OTP framework to analyze these two properties based on 5 key factors. Before we begin, here's an overview of some of the launches in the area over the past few years as well as the coming months. If you haven't seen my video where I've walked the ground of every single one of them, do check out in the link above where I'll be giving you an on-the-ground tour. So if you take a look at the map, you can see that River Valley has had a steady supply. Since 2023 we have Revere, and then in 2024 we have Avenir, and then this year in 2025 we have Irwell Hill Residences. Now Robertson Opus, which is a 999-year development of Robertson Walk, will be launching on the 19th of July, and right now we are in the preview phase for River Green and Promenade Peak. Now, in the 3rd and 4th quarter of 2025, we'll likely have the launch of Zyon Grand. This is the Zyon Road Parcel A. And then next year, probably around July onwards, we will have the River Valley Parcel B. So that's a total of 2,600 plus units from 2025 onwards. And with this spike in supply, what do developers do? They have to compete with one another. And in just these 2 weeks, we have 2 developments competing with one another. First, we have River Green, which is by Wing Tai. This sits directly next to Great World MRT. Then we have Promenade Peak by All Green. This is just across the Singapore River. You are opposite Great World City, and this is probably closer to Havelock MRT. Let's start off by looking at the first factor in our OTP framework, which is attributes. And in attributes, unit mix is one of the key things that I look for in every single development. And right off the start, you can see that they are actually very different products. For River Green, it's kind of positioned more towards smaller units. If you take a look over here, the 4-bedroom is only 980 square feet. So a lot of you might say, wow, so small, can buy meh? Well, more on that later. Then for Promenade Peak, it's slightly more balanced. You can see that there are sizes that are much bigger. Even the smallest 3-bedroom, which is 1,033 square feet, is larger than River Green's 4-bedroom. So especially if you take a look at the premium series, you can see they are much larger in size. Another important attribute is the density, because density affects the feels and the vibes of the development. Now there is some quirk to these 2 developments, which is these are high-rise developments, so it's kind of a function of them being high on a slightly smaller plot of land. That's why you get higher density over here. The per square feet of the land over here is probably quite small if you compare them to some of the past launches. For example, Parktown, Alta, they are in fact more dense than some of the past few launches. Now Promenade Peak over here, you can see is even denser than River Green, and again this is because of function of its very high stories. This is a total of 63 stories, and it will make it the highest ever pure residential development in Singapore. On to the site plan, let's take a look at River Green. You can see we have full facilities over here. You have a lap pool as well as a tennis court. However, you look at how the land is actually positioned, one whole side of the development will get direct west sun, which is probably not the best if you're living there. And for the views, it's pretty good. You are 36 stories high. Again, the west facing units are probably the worst off over here because you are looking directly into the Trillium or Cosmopolitan. You might only have some pocket views. Whereas the east facing, once you go above 15 stories, you actually overlook the lower Yong An Park and you can actually look very far ahead. But the best facing, they left it for the south facing units. This is where the frontage of that whole land plot gives you unblocked views of more than 100 meters. And the developer, again, is pretty smart. They placed the best units there. These are the 4 bedrooms and the larger 3 bedrooms. Onto Promenade Peak, and there is a unique selling point over here. It will be home to the tallest ever infinity pool in Singapore, sitting at 63 stories high. Views wise, it's going to be even better than River Green. You can overlook all of your surrounding developments. The north-facing units, because you're overlooking Great Wall City, which is only about 30 plus stories high, once you go about 40 stories, you will clearly overlook them. And if you take a look at how the developer has actually positioned their units, the premium units, which is the larger floor plates, and the units that have the private lift, they start from the 44th story all the way to the 62nd story. This is the unique selling point of the premium units over there. Here's a quick side-by-side comparison of their attributes. It is important to note that River Green is District 9, which is by definition purely CCR, whereas for Promenade Peak, although it's just across the Singapore River, by definition, it is in District 3, which is the RCR. Now, this is a very good example where the lines are blurred between RCR and CCR. Essentially, Promenade Peak, at least for the purposes of the analysis today, I will be treating it as more of like a CCR property just because of its proximity to the River Valley area as well as Great Wall MRT. Now, for River Green, you can see that again, the higher number of smaller units is a negative, but the positive over here is that it has direct connection to MRT, and maybe something that you need to take note of, because there's a higher proportion of small units, there's only going to be 50% car park lots. On the other hand, for Promenade Peak, it's kind of equidistant, so you can walk to either Great Wall MRT or Havelock MRT. Both are under 5 minutes. It's good to see again that the developer, they are trying to angle it and position it differently from River Green. It is kind of a more own-stay-centric development, so you get larger units and of course 80% car park lots, which is a positive. So all in all, how do I rate them? Well, for River Green, unfortunately, we have to admit that there will be a handful of units that get that direct west sun facing, and then you also have the slightly poorer unit mix. So I do give it a slightly lower score of 3.5 out of 5. Whereas for Promenade Peak, you can see that it's a little bit more balanced, the unit mix is right. However, the negative might be its higher density, but you still get kind of full facilities. The tennis court is not a tennis court, but a pickleball court. And more importantly, the USB, you get amazing unblocked views, and that is why I rate it 4 out of 5. Moving on to the second factor, which is the location attributes, and this is where the two properties are very similar. The key difference, I think, is that River Green, you are directly connected to Great Wall MRT, whereas for Promenade Peak, you have to walk, but it is still less than 5 minutes. So these two properties are also within 1 km of the popular River Valley Primary. They both get to enjoy the amenities that comes from Great Wall City. You have your supermarkets, F&Bs, shops. And what I really like about this area is that you can either take a walk down to Robertson Quay for your more atas kind of restaurants, but there's also the Zyon Riverside Food Centre that gives you affordable local fare as well. And that is one of the key reasons why even Singaporeans do strive to live in this area. Now, both are great location-wise. I really can't fault any of them. River Green definitely ticks all the boxes of direct link to MRT, good schools, and amenities, so it scores a perfect 5 out of 5. Whereas for Promenade Peak, it also has the same attributes. However, I have to score it just a little bit lower, 4.5, just because it is not directly linked to any MRT. Next, let's move on to the more quantitative stuff, and this is where I have to spend a lot of effort to come up with the research that I'm about to share with you. So please subscribe to the channel, like the video. Every single one of them means a lot to me. Now over here, we have done the comparables in the area, and the usual check that I've always done is that if the resale properties in the area are not performing well, what makes you think that your new launch will buck the trend of actual realized transactions and suddenly become profitable? So for this list, I've actually used the properties in the surrounding area, and they have to TOP after 2005. I've also tried to cap them to the larger units. The smallest over here is probably Tribeca, which is 175 units. Now, their profits have been pretty decent. Over here, you can see that they are actually doing quite well, averaging about 3% across the different bedroom types. So a lot of people have been talking about, CCR is doing badly, but CCR properties are not all the same. This is definitely a better area and has been outperforming other areas like the CBD. Across all the unit types, you can see I've averaged them in the last row. you can see that the larger the unit goes, the higher the annualized gains. Interestingly, the 5 bedrooms are not as profitable as your 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and 4 bedrooms. And I think that this is a function of a lack of supply of 5 bedrooms. A lot of them are actually buying for own stay. And if you take a look at the comparables over here, there's only 2 developments that even have 5 bedrooms. This is Avenir and the Trillium. River Valley, for its location, you would expect rentability to be good, and it is proven to be good. Over here, the relationship kind of flips around. The 1 bedrooms actually outperform the larger units in terms of the rental yield. This is a high rentability area. If you walk around that area, you'll see a lot of expats. So expect healthy rental yields across the board, particularly for the smaller units. On to the price, the developers have already announced their starting from price, and this is exactly what I want to see, developers fighting one another, and an indicated pretty low starting from price. For River Green, which is a CCR next to the MRT, you got shopping malls, you got the good school, it's starting from only $2,800 per square feet, whereas for Promenade Peak, prices start from just $2,600 per square feet. You have Havelock MRT and then the same attributes like the school. So this is definitely a very low starting from price. However, with all my analysis, I always want to look at the average price instead. But if you take a look over here, to come to a better conclusion on whether this development is a good buy or not, I've actually estimated some of the average pricing. So this is kind of like the middle floor of the entire development. Now again, River Green, the smaller sizes, you can see the intent of Wing Tai. They have positioned it as a very low entry price project to attract more mass market buyers, so they can actually finally enter into the River Valley area. Just take a look at the quantum. $2.7 million for a 3-bedroom and $3 million for a 4-bedroom. While Promenade Peak, it does have the lower PSF, but because of its taller height as well, you can see that the average quantum is actually pretty similar to that of River Green, if not slightly higher in some of the layouts, but that's also due to the larger size. So the higher price units, which is the premium units, these are from the 44th floor to the 62nd floor. They will start from $3,100 per square feet, and I estimate an average of about $3,200 per square feet. So notice how they are positioning again the premium units. Because of its bigger size, the higher floor, the higher PSF would result in a higher quantum. A signature OTP analysis is to next look at the price gap of these new launches to the older resale properties nearby. Now again, admittedly, it's a little bit tough to compare 99-year properties to the other properties that are freehold, but it's good to know that at least the price gap is well within range. The price gap, in fact, if I take a look over here, it is lower than the past launches. More importantly, when we compare, let's say, River Green to the other 99-year developments, Orwell Hill and Revere, at only $42 per square feet and $33 per square feet premium per year respectively, I think that that is a very safe price gap for River Green. Next, for Promenade Peak, the same conclusion applies over here. The overall PSF of Promenade Peak is slightly lower than River Green, about $2,900 per square feet, and because of that, the price gap is even narrower. If we compare it to the recent 99-year projects like Orwell Hill and Revere, it is only $2 and $0 per square feet premium per year. This is definitely a cheap price gap. Now, essentially for these two launches, if you take a look at the PSF or quantum, it's kind of like rewinding the clock to 5 or 6 years ago. So you are able to buy these properties at the same price of Orwell Hill and Revere. I think that that is again a very safe entry price. And because of that, I rate the third factor, which is price and profit analysis, a 4 out of 5. Moving on to another signature OTP analysis, this is our supply ratio, where the lower the ratio, the better it is for you. First up, the 2 bedrooms, not the best numbers over here, but not bad either. So if we exclude River Green and Promenade Peak, the supply ratio is 15.4%, but this is in large part due to the large number of units on sale at Orwell Hill. So if we exclude Orwell Hill, the ratio actually drops to 8.3%. Note that there is still a slightly higher than the average number of listings at some of the newer TOP projects like Revere and Avenir, so that's kind of expected as well. So 2-bedroom buyers, listen up. Now this is something that not all of your agents might tell you, but it is difficult to sell your properties at River Green or Promenade Peak at TOP just because there will be a sudden spike in terms of listings and supply. So whenever you buy a property like this, it is very important to have the right expectations and also the right holding period to match your investment strategy. And one last thing to note is that even though you go to Property Guru, you search Orwell Hill 2 bedrooms, you see a lot of units, but in fact, a lot of them are actually tenanted and the asking prices are pretty high, sometimes unrealistic even. So this high supply ratio number is a little bit misleading over here. Moving on to the 3 bedrooms, the picture improves dramatically. You can see that this layout is definitely more for own-stay buyers. The supply ratio is much lower at 6.6%. And if we exclude Orwell Hill, the supply ratio is lower again at 5.6%. Notice here that Revere, pretty new TOP project, it has a higher number of listings. And I did check that there are also some duplicates over there. Moving on to the 4 bedrooms, and surprisingly, the 4 bedrooms actually have a higher supply ratio of 7.6%, and if we exclude Orwell Hill, it is 6.3%. So while these supply ratios are not very high, again, I think this is because of some of the recent TOP projects, and I do expect to decline over the next few years. Again, your holding period, if you ever to buy any of these River Valley new launches, is very important. Not forgetting that going forward, we still have 2 new launches coming up, which is Zyon Grand as well as the River Valley Green Parcel B. Hence, the supply ratio here is not the best, and because of that, I will have to rate it a 3.5 out of 5. If you have been a follower of my channel over the past few years, you'll realize that this supply ratio is a little higher than some of my top picks over the past few years. So the question is, can you still buy this? If you have the expectations to quickly flip it at TOP, then this might not be the product for you. Always expect to hold it, rent it out for maybe 1 to 2 years, wait for all the excess supply to clear, and that's when you can probably get the best price. Every property has its pros and cons, and I always strive to give you my 100% objective analysis. So if you like my objective analysis of all the new launches coming up in 2025, fill up the Google form that I've left the link below, and I'll share with you my ultimate guide to new launches 2025. Moving on to the final factor, which is our upside potential and exit strategy. Promenade Peak and River Green presents one of the largest quantum advantage that I've seen in recent years. Looking at the comparison over here, you'll see the quantum advantage is clear. You can enter at a significantly lower price compared to some of the older resale properties in the area. And even if we disregard the freehold properties that, of course, they have much larger sizes, my estimated average quantum of River Green and Promenade Peak are also lower than that of Orwell Hill that TOP in 2024 and Revere that TOP in 2023. So this is your chance to kind of like turn back time by about 5 years and enter at the 5 years ago price. I think that this gives you a very good margin of safety. Secondly, if you take a look at the map over here, while there is an influx of new supply and that might probably make it harder for you to sell at TOP, I think that this is still a good thing in the long run because the future lands will also be selling at a higher price, thereby pulling up the prices of all the resale developments nearby. Now, a recap of some of the upcoming launches in the area. You have Zyon Grand by CDL. This is the Zyon Road Parcel A. And then you also have River Valley Green Parcel B by Google Land, but this will probably only be launching in the 2nd or 3rd quarter of 2026. A quick analysis over here for Zyon Grand. Now, Zyon Grand will be the first SA2 plots. So this means that apart from the residential units, you will also have about 430 service apartments. So since there isn't a lot of information yet, here's a simple analysis of what I like and don't like about Zyon Grand. Now, one important thing to note is kind of like wishful thinking, right? We always hope that this property, because they bought the land at a lower price, would the developers sell it to you at a lower price too? Well, I think history has already proven multiple times that the developer will probably minimally sell it at the same price as Promenade Peak. So if you find Promenade Peak suitable today, I think there's very little reason for you to wait for Zyon Grand. In addition, if you take a look at Zyon Grand over here, what I don't really like about it is that it is also the furthest away from Great Wall City, and it's also the noisiest of the three because you are flanked by not only Zion Road, Kim Sing Road, but also Havelock Road. And next is the most expensive land cost over there so far. This is the River Valley Green Parcel B. Google Land won the bid. They are the top bid out of 5 at $1,420 per square feet. This is 8.6% higher than the second bid by Sing Holdings. This plot will be a mixed-use development. There will be about 475 residential units as well as the first storage, which will comprise of your retail shops. What I really like about this plot is that there's a very wide frontage facing Singapore River. However, you don't get the spectacular unblocked views like Promenade Peak because this is still a slightly lower development. And because the river facing views plus the highest land cost to date, I bet that this will be the most expensive launch next year. Lastly, if we zoom out and just take a look at the macro picture, right, the relative pricing and value of Promenade Peak and River Green is pretty clear. So just take a look at the latest government land sales at Bayshore. This is actually in the OCR and the prices are shocking. Based on the land bid cost, the expected selling price of about $2,700 to $2,800 per square feet in the OCR. Very close to Promenade Peak already. And if you still don't get it, take a look at this visually, right? River Valley, $2,900 to $3,000 per square feet, and Bayshore, $2,700 to $2,800 per square feet. Now, which one makes more sense? Leave your comments down below on which property you would buy. Apart from the Bayshore plot, we also have recent government land sales at Dunnan. This is also in the CCR and the prices are also sold at very similar land cost to River Valley Green Parcel B. Then Trunk Grove in the OCR is also very high, $1,376 per square feet. There is another plot in River Valley. This is the River Valley Green Parcel C. It is still on the reserve side, but you can make a guess what is the rough range that it will eventually be sold at. And if we zoom out even further, the macro story of the CCR has been the most compelling that it has been in recent years. If you take a look over here, the price gap of CCR to OCR being at just $595 per square feet, it is the narrowest price gap we've had in almost 20 years. And compared to the RCR, the same story, we have the smallest gap in over 20 years. This is only at $295 per square feet. So what I've done here is actually break it down further into the bedroom sizes. Now the 1 bedroom per square feet is already very close to that of the 1 bedrooms in the RCR. And in some instances, take a look at the 2 bedrooms, CCR, PSF have actually dipped below that of RCR 2 bedrooms. This is in large part due to the blurring of lines between CCR and RCR. This high RCR number is also contributed by One Marina Gardens that was launched this year. Even though it's very close to the CBD, it was actually classified as RCR. Lastly, the 3-bedroom picture is also pretty good if you were to enter the CCR today. Relative to the other 2 regions, you can see that the gap to the RCR is almost similar already. So the CCR price gap to that of the RCR and OCR is as good as it can be, at least historically, right? But eventually, when you go to the resale market, if you take a look over here, I did some rough numbers. Let's say you were to buy a 3 bedrooms. So buyers in the resale market, they would think, hey, I just top up $100,000 more and I can actually live in River Valley area. Why not, right? So I think because of this change in dynamics, mass market buyers, HDB upgraders will be more keen to actually upgrade to such areas, and the risk to reward ratio of buying into the CCR today is very good. Lastly, and I think very importantly, you probably have heard many people on YouTube saying, wow, CCR now has been the cheapest it has been. I've also just said it, but I've also had to convince myself to tell you very definitively that I think that the risk to reward ratio is very good right now. So I've dived into the numbers, I've done the research, and the conclusion is that CCR is not all built the same. CCR is still comprised of multiple different districts, and different districts have performed differently. In fact, if we take a look over here, District 1, this is where all your CBD properties are at, they have been negative 14% over the past 15 years. Whereas more own-stay-centric developments, River Valley, for example, in District 9, Bukit Timah, Holland Village in District 10, and then your Newton and Novena in District 9 have showed strong growth over the past 15 years. All in all, the upside potential and exit strategy is good for River Green and Promenade Peak. On the positive side, we have the great quantum advantage. This will make our entry prices safe and your future exit is also assured, with the land price rising in places much less convenient as compared to River Valley. However, I do have to bump down the score a little bit, and this is because of that quick spike in supply. You would expect to actually hold the property for a little bit longer, rent it out, wait for all that TOP supply to clear the market before you can sell. And lastly, I think that River Green is positioned again more for buyers on the lower budget. So the exit strategy, especially for the smaller units, might not be as good. Of course, if you buy the 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms, I think that is the right unit layouts to buy over there. This would definitely be more desirable for all the mass market HDB upgraders out there. Whereas for Promenade Peak, I think the quantum being higher because of its larger size will make it a little bit harder for the immediate direct HDB upgraders to buy. But definitely if you take a look at people who are aspiring to live in River Valley, HDB upgraders who have already moved once, or in places whereby their profits are really huge, right? They will actually be able to consider these units as a huge upgrade to where they are currently living. And I think that the future resale buyers will also deem the premium units at Promenade Peak more livable. And with that, here's the quick overview of River Green compared to Promenade Peak based on our OTP framework analysis. If you like what you see and think that we work well together, you can actually reach out to me on WhatsApp and view the show flats because the previews of these two developments have already started. And if you think that River Green or Promenade Peak is just not the property for you, not to worry, because some of my top ranked properties in 2025 are still coming up. If you'd like to see my analysis of all the properties in 2025, do fill up the Google form link below and I'll be happy to share the PDF with you. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.